I got something to show you. My volcanic pistol.
That's really, really cool. It's amazing this came in the shop here. It's hard to find these things.
Yep.
Most people think the biggest deals on Pawn Stars happen across a counter in Las Vegas. But one day, Rick Harrison found himself standing in the middle of the Nevada desert, staring at a fully operational World War II artifact worth $1.5 million. And somehow, that wasn't even the most expensive item he would encounter. So what item pushed him closer than ever to making the biggest purchase of his career?
Right here. I got a gold bar I want you to look at.
All right.
Oh, wow. Hey, Pops. You want to come look at this?
Where in the world did you get this?
Grandma just passed away a few months ago. We were cleaning things out, and we found this thing.
And which unbelievable treasure left even Rick Harrison speechless. Join us as we unveil the $1.5 million item that shocked everyone on Pawn Stars. The $1.5 million deal. For years, thousands of sellers have stepped into the gold and silver pawn shop with different expectations, some confident in what their possessions are worth, others not so much. Across from them, Rick usually stands with a poker face, making quick but calculated decisions about what something is worth versus what someone thinks it's worth. But one of the most consistent patterns throughout the show is that when the seller walks in with a number in mind, Rick cuts it drastically. The result is usually one of two things. Both parties either find a middle ground or walk away from the deal. So when Rick heard there was an authentic M4A3 Sherman tank sitting in the Nevada desert, his interest was piqued, but he didn't immediately ask how much it cost. Instead, he calculated how much the trip to the desert would cost him. Given Rick's personality, it's understandable. He's the kind of businessman who spent 20 minutes checking the edge of a pre-1964 quarter to make sure it's pure silver. So one can imagine the level of scrutiny he would bring to a vehicle that costs more than most American homes. The seller arranged a meeting out in the open desert, and Rick agreed to go. When Rick arrived at the location, the first thing he saw was its sheer scale. Frankly, calling the tank an item sounds unnatural, given its intimidating size. Not to mention, the M4A3 Sherman wasn't just a historical artifact, but a functioning machine. It was estimated to contain approximately 30 tons of steel, a diesel engine, a rotating turret, and decades of history baked into every weld and bolt. The seller had clearly done his homework and was ready to deal. He understood the value of what he had, and he knew that Rick understood it too. The seller named his asking price, $1.5 million. He was asking that amount for a piece of verified World War II combat history that still runs. Rick Harrison almost never makes a major purchase without calling in an expert. And it's not because he doesn't know things. Rick is genuinely one of the most knowledgeable people in the secondary market for historical artifacts, weapons, coins, and collectibles. But knowledge has limits. And when it involves a potential outlay that could wipe out a significant portion of the working capital, one doesn't just rely on guts alone. So, Rick called in an expert to evaluate the vehicle's condition, its historical documentation, its mechanical functionality, and, most importantly, its actual market value. The expert's evaluation process is thorough, and understandably so. He examined the exterior and the mechanical components, then did what every good appraiser does. He talked about the last comparable sale and adjusted from there. However, his conclusion landed squarely on the seller's price, $1.5 million. Rick now believed the authenticity of the tank, but he still had a serious problem. It's one thing to know that something is worth $1.5 million, but having the ability to buy something for that price is a different thing altogether. Rick merely runs a pawn shop. Even though it's very successful and well-known, The business model is still based on liquidity, buying things, sell them, and keep cash moving. But to tie up $1.5 million in a single asset that requires specialized buyers and extended time to sell is not a risk many are willing to take. Before the expert even gave his final verdict, Rick had already gotten behind the wheel, or, more accurately, inside the hatch, and experienced the tank firsthand. Rick had come all the way, thinking he might be able to get into a deal like that for a couple of $100,000, maybe $200,000 or $300,000. But that asking price? That was, as Rick himself put it, so out of the ballpark for him. Not because the tank wasn't worth it, but because Rick Harrison is neither a museum nor a wealthy collector with unlimited capital looking for trophy assets. Rick didn't try to negotiate the seller down. He simply conceded. He effectively acknowledged that the gap between what this tank is worth and what he could responsibly pay for it was too large to bridge through standard back and forth. And just like that, he chose to back down from the deal. Rick refused to pay $1.5 million for the tank, but he offered that same amount for another item: George Washington's three-piece suit. By now, any fan of Pawn Stars knows Rick Harrison's eyes are always on profits, and that's why any demand by a guest on Pawn Stars sounds too high to him at first, just like the M4A3 tank guy. In a special episode, Rick Harrison went down to Washington, D.C. to check out a collection of great Americana curated by a man named Brian. While the owner refused to sell a few items, he put a huge price tag on George Washington's suit that made even Rick say, "That's a lot of money!" In the episode, Brian discussed the significance of the item and how he had kept it well preserved and on display for over 2 decades. He said he had purchased it at an auction in New York, and before that, the all-silk suit, originally pink, had been passed down for generations in Washington's family. Brian explained in his interview that it was one of his first major purchases from his collection of Americana and was a major highlight of his collection. But if Rick wanted him to put a price on it, he would. And that's how the $3 million tag came to be. Upon taking a look at the item, Rick was astonished. The pawnshop boss said it was amazing. And if he could go back and have a cup of coffee with just about anybody in history, it would probably be this George Washington. According to Rick, George Washington's suit was by far the coolest thing he'd ever seen across 9 years and 500 episodes of doing the Pawn Stars show. It's the most amazing thing from one of history's greatest men. Brian then added that the suit was probably from the 1750s or 60s, and it had faded over the years and gathered some wear and tear. Rick had his expert and go-to authenticator, Mark Hall Patton, with him, who also confirmed that given the provenance and the age of the silk suit, everything looked to be in order. He explained that George Washington was always very aware of how he presented himself. Pink would have been a bright color, and one that really would have set him off as a fashion-conscious individual. Rick then asked the big question of how much he would need to pay to add the item to his collection. To this, Brian still maintained that he wouldn't sell the item for anything less than $3 million. When Rick exclaimed that it was a lot of money, Brian responded that it was also a lot of shit. Rick then admitted that it would be the first time he was considering such a large purchase. He seemed really interested in the suit, saying it never occurred to him that one would be available. But he wasn't one to make too much haste. Yet when he said he would go think about it for a little bit, it was completely out of character for Rick. True to his word, Rick met up with the owner back at the hotel, stressing again that it was the first time he had considered making a multi-million-dollar purchase. He then offered Brina $1.5 million for the item, and the owner politely declined. According to Brian, he was taking their friendship into consideration and would lower the price to $2.5 million, no less. When the owner stood firm on the offer, Harrison chose to take a pass. In the end, he said, although he didn't get the suit, he knew it didn't fit him anyway. Everyone knows he said that to console himself for the deal that couldn't be made. But million-dollar deals seem to be hunting Rick because both the suit and the tank pale in comparison to the next item: the holy grail of coins. When it comes to coins, Rick is known to be very stingy with his offers and has even turned down rare coins worth $700,000, as it could bankrupt him. That is why, when he made an offer of over $20 million, it was a very rare opportunity for a seller and a huge shock for viewers. Rick did make that offer when he came across the world's most precious coins on a visit to the Legacy Club, which is known for showcasing valuable items. He met a guest, Ian, who showed him the holy grail of coin collections, a 1933 Double Eagle $20 gold coin. As Rick walked into the building, he briefed the viewers on what was going to happen, saying he was about to see the most expensive coin in the world. After meeting with Ian, the host finally got to take a look at the rare coin. Ian pulled out the PCGS-graded gold coin, and Rick's mind was blown. The coin was part of the last gold coins struck for circulation by the U.S. Mint. It is one of the rarest coins because, before its release, a presidential order by Franklin Delano Roosevelt prohibited banks from paying out gold coins or certificates. Thus, all 1933 Double Eagles were ordered to be destroyed, but 10 of them managed to escape into private hands. In the 1930s and 40s, these coins were sold for as little as $1,000 to $2,200. And by 2021, their value had hit the sky. In 2021, a 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle coin sold for $18.9 million at auction, becoming the single most expensive coin sold in a public sale, according to the Smithsonian Magazine. Rick himself said in the interview that it's literally considered one of the most beautiful coins ever made. When asked about the story of the coin, Ian shared that it was first purchased by King Farouk of Egypt in the 1940s. He explained that the king was the world's largest coin collector and had purchased the coin in the United States, then applied for an export license. It is mainly because of that export license that there's this one coin that's legal to own. He then revealed that the coin disappeared from the king's possession for 40-odd years before resurfacing back in America in the 1990s. As soon as it arrived on American soil, the FBI conducted a sting operation, and 2 coin dealers were arrested for trying to sell the coin. For many years, there was legal action, and the end result was that the single coin was legal to sell and legally own. Ian told Rick that he represented the owner, and the coin was officially back on sale. When the pawn shop boss asked Ian how much the owner wanted for the coin, he told him that they were looking for over $30 million. While the number was indeed too high, Rick told the guest that he was willing to purchase the coin. However, to verify the coin's worth, Rick called in his expert, Jeff Garrett. And all he could say was, "Wow, it's stunning." He confirmed that it was an original, and, on top of that, perhaps the most famous coin in the world. He then explained that many billionaires and multimillionaires were interested in the coin, and it could go for a lot of money at an auction. Hearing all that, Rick made a bid of $25 million for the coin. However, Ian wasn't ready to let the precious coin go for anything less than $30. So Rick had to walk away, empty-handed. But at least he got to appraise the real coin. In fact, for every legitimate treasure like the Double Eagle, there are a dozen fakes, forgeries, and nightmares waiting to unravel. Since he now knows the original, it's unlikely that he'll ever fall victim to the fake. Rick, together with his co-stars on Pawn Stars, made their mark in the world of reality TV, and now many believe the show has ended. But what's the real story? And how real is the show? How real is the reality show? To put the rumor to rest, it's important to note that the show has ended. At least as of early 2026, Pawn Stars did not officially announce a permanent cancellation, but is on indefinite hiatus after its contract with the History Channel expired, following Season 23. But there's a burning question that's been on everyone's mind since the beginning. Is Pawn Stars fake? Is it scripted? Looking at it closely, it's reasonable to think so. Because how else could Rick possibly know the historical detail of every item on the spot? Obviously, the idea that the cast might be reciting lines verbatim would completely destroy the illusion of reality. Fortunately for the loyal fan base, who truly enjoy the show's perceived authenticity, Pawn Stars doesn't adhere to a strict script, at least not entirely. The cast members do not deliver pre-written lines because the show tries to maintain a semblance of spontaneity. But the fact that there is no scripted dialogue doesn't mean there's no guidance. On set, there are members of the crew whom the executive producer refers to as scripters, according to his interview with Odyssey. Their role is to strategically feed facts to the cast members and shape the show's narrative in real time. So is the show scripted? No. There's also the problem of location. Many critics of Pawn Stars have proposed a rather compelling theory that a significant portion of the show is filmed not in an actual shop, but on a set. The claim remains speculative and lacks outright confirmation, but it starts to make more sense when one dives into the observations made by fans. That said, it's probably safe to assume that the show is probably filmed both in the actual shop and on a set. And here's why. A writer for Vital Vegas compared screenshots from the show with photos taken by those who have visited the real-life shop. He noticed the physical store and its on-screen representation have a number of differences. Not only that, another Reddit user captured a screenshot from an episode that appears to reveal a fake hallway in the background. These details alone fuel the theory that the show's creators may have constructed a separate set to mimic the iconic pawn shop. One thing is confirmed, though. Not just anyone is allowed to walk into the shop with something to sell. Before anyone can appear on camera, sellers and their items must undergo a vetting process with producers to ensure the items are TV-worthy and the sellers are camera-ready. During this process, the producers actively seek out potential sellers who possess intriguing or unique items. And as a matter of fact, this may involve reaching out to individuals who have contacted the show expressing an interest in selling. It's not just about the monetary value of the items, but also about the historical, cultural, or personal stories behind them. The producers are also looking for sellers who are not only willing to part with their possessions, but are also comfortable and engaging on camera. Salesman Rocco Landi once shared with the Las Vegas Review-Journal about rare instances on the show when segments had to be cut entirely because sellers couldn't pull it together on camera. There are many more reasons why some people believe the show is not authentic. But does this make Pawn Stars inherently fake? It depends on who you ask, but it definitely disrupts the viewer's experience. Still, many more people are waiting for the show to resume. The items are real, the people who come to see them are real, and whatever agreement is reached during negotiation stands. Since the show is on a hiatus, the cast members are all caught up doing other things. Today, Rick no longer works full-time at the pawn shop. He is now involved with Pawn Stars Do America, which is in its second season. Judging by his current pace, it seems he is moving toward semi-retirement, taking life a little slower. Rick now dedicates more time to his fiancée and family, focusing on enjoying life while balancing work. This new chapter shows that even after enduring significant challenges, Rick is determined to find happiness and make the most of his days. With his engagement to Angie and the smooth running of his business, It appears he is navigating life quite well. Regardless, the pawn shop is still standing, and many more historical items are still being appraised. While surprises have occasionally shaken the shop, nothing compares to the thrill of discovering a weapon so rare and valuable that even Rick himself is left speechless. Will Rick ever close a deal worth millions of dollars? More importantly, will Pawn Stars return to the screens? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.